this. Now that is a scone. Look at the texture. Look how beautifully craggly they are. I'm fogging up because they're still so hot. Scallions, puddles of cheese. Look at that cheese. You know how so often scones are dry and they're kind of like a hockey puck, they're crumbly, and they're just not worth the calories? Not these. I'm doing not one, but two types. And not only that, I'm doing one sweet and one savory. We're going into the holidays. We need to have great food ready at a moment's notice. And at the end of this video, I'm going to show you how to do that too. Great scones, sweet or savory, doesn't matter. All the different varieties you can make. I'll give you some examples, but we'll be able to have them ready when guests show up. That's what we're doing today, right here. In this bowl, we have our flour, salt, baking powder, and baking soda. All of the ingredients, there's a fly, all of the ingredients will be in the description below in our link, so don't worry about it. Okay, we mix that up, make sure we've got our dry ingredients mixed really well, just using a whisk. In here, I've got 1 cup of heavy cream. I dropped in an egg. Where did I put you? I dropped in an egg and I dropped in a bit of vanilla, okay? And we're gonna mix that. I like to mix my liquid ingredients. I always break up my egg and whip it up. I don't just drop the egg in and then chase it around the bowl. I don't have the patience. So I always take that extra moment and just make sure my egg has been dealt with. Stick you there. Okay? If by chance you're wanting to bake and you don't have heavy cream, but you've got everything else you need to make a batch of scones, use half the amount of sour cream and half of milk. Give that a good whip together and you're going to get an excellent replacement. I've been doing that for at least 15 years and it works great. And I do it in a lot of things, not just scones. If I needed heavy cream for something and I don't have it, unless it's a big deal and I'm doing it for an event, I swap out and it works great. Okay, so now we're going to go ahead and add our sugar. Okay, again, the amounts will be below. We've got our dry ingredients. Here we've got our cream and our egg and our extracts. And then we've got our butter cut into cubes. Now what we have to do is we have to work the butter throughout our flour. You can do this by hand or you can use a pastry cutter. This is a pastry cutter. Okay. I want the butter to stay as cold as possible. And for that reason, I will not be using my fingers. You'll often see me do that if I'm making a crumb topping or something where it doesn't matter. In this case, it matters. So we don't want to warm the butter up with our fingertips. So for that reason, I'm going to use the pastry cutter. Okay. And I'm running hot. I think we all know if I'm awake, I'm having a hot flash. If I'm asleep, I'm having a hot flash. So I definitely don't want to handle this butter. So now you can see that our butter has been broken up and we've got nice little crumbles here of butter. Now, again, I'm not going to start working it like you have often seen me do with my fingertips. I'm just tossing it to make sure there's no big giant chunks of butter. So I'm giving that a feel. Now, before we move on to our wet ingredients, we've got the zest of 1 large bright-skinned orange. We're making, I may have forgotten to tell you, we're making cranberry-orange scones because we're going into cranberry season. Now, I say that, but then I go ahead and I use dry cranberries, and I'll explain why. What I'm doing here is you just saw me put the zest in. I toss the zest with the flour because if I put the wet ingredients in and then put the zest in, the zest doesn't get to move around and you'll end up with little clumps where you've got great orange flavor and then other bites that have none. By adding it in with the dry ingredients, it gets coated and spread throughout so every bite will have the right flavor. Okay? Now we're going to add our wet ingredients, 1 cup of heavy cream, 1 egg, and a bit of vanilla. Okay, I'll stick you there because we're coming back for you. Okay, so now we're just with the spatula, we're just going to start to fold this in So with the one end, with the spatula, you're folding over, and with the other hand, you're spinning the bowl. We have not added the cranberries yet. So I use dry cranberries even during cranberry season, and there's a reason. When you work with fresh cranberries, just like when you work with fresh blueberries in something like this, it tends to really discolor your dough. And you end up with this really bizarre looking color, and that's not what we want. We want the color to be really inviting and, you know, huge cranberry flavor, but we don't want it to have this really weird gray cast that it turns when you use fresh cranberries. It starts out red, and then it starts to turn this weird gray. And I think it's, even though the flavor is fantastic, I don't like the way it looks. And we eat with our eyes first. So what you can do is, you know, during cranberry time, if you get lots of cranberries, you can dry them or you can buy them. In my case, I did buy them. They are organic. This is the brand I'm using. I use organic whenever I can. And I've used these for years. They're great. Okay? I'll link them. So now that we have our scone dough pretty well mixed up, now, while it's still open like this and it's still moving around, I have not pushed any pressure on it yet. This is the point where we add our cranberries. Okay? So now, again, we're going to, with the spatula in one hand and turning the bowl with the other, we're going to move those cranberries throughout the entire mixture. If you've got a big clump, break it. We want the cranberries to be evenly distributed, just like we wanted the orange peel. The smell is unbelievable. Very, very bright orange smell. Okay. Now, put you there. I'm going to clean up this mess. We'll be right back, and I'm going to show you how to shape these. Be right back. We take our beautiful dough that we've made, and we move it on to our work surface. Okay? We're going to use this bowl again, so I'll set that aside. I'm going to bring everything together very gently. We're not just going to smush it all together. That is not what we're trying to do here. Okay, so now with our bench scraper, we bring it all together. Okay, and now what we're going to do is we're going to bring it down. We want it to be about 1 inch thick. This has baking powder and baking soda in it, so it will rise. This is too high. And plus, it depends on what you want. If you want to just cut it into squares, you can do that. You can cut it out into using a cutter. I find that to be very wasteful because you end up with pieces that you have to kind of re-roll and then cut again. And the second cut is never as good as the first. So this is what I do, and you can do whatever works for you, but this is what I do. I press down until I've got a circle that's about 1 inch high, or 1 inch in height, depth, whatever. 1 inch thick, let's go with that. Okay, and now I want it to be a circle. Okay, anything that's underneath, we grab. Anything that's loose, and we stick it right up on the top. Now I make sure I'm not stuck to the board. You may hear a lawnmower going. My husband is mowing the grass. We're on 4 acres, so that takes a little while. I'm sorry about that. I'm hoping it won't be too much of an interruption, but we'll see. Okay, so now we're right about where we need to be. Now we're going to take some more heavy cream, and we're going to brush the heavy cream over the entire thing. Very often you'll see people do this when it's already cut and it's ready to go. I don't do that. I do this when it's whole so that I get better coverage, but I don't have it running down the sides. I like the difference in the texture between the nicely caramelized top and those really pretty blonde sides. So for that reason, I do it at this point. Okay, so we've got our cream on there. And now we're going to just sprinkle on sanding sugar. Now, if you don't have sanding sugar is just a larger grain of sugar. If by chance you don't have that, maybe you have sugar in the raw, that works just as well. When I'm out of sanding sugar, I just go right away and I switch over to sugar in the raw. This leaves a really nice texture on the top of your scone. If that bothers you, if you just don't like that extra crunch, you want it to just not have that, skip it. That is not a huge effect on the recipe. Okay, so now we're going to cut this, and we've got our sheet pan, and we are going to cut it in half diagonal, and half the other way diagonal. And then we're going to come around and each one gets cut in half. Doing it this way, I'm sorry about the dogs barking, my husband set them off. Doing it this way, everything's not overworked. We have no extra pieces that we need to re-roll to cut. And each wedge, we'll just move them out like this, and then very gently pull them apart, okay? Now, we're gonna put these onto a lined baking sheet. Any piece that's kind of falling off, you just kind of tuck it back in. Don't press hard, that's not what we're trying to do. We want those little craggly bits, we want that. But we certainly don't want them to fall apart. So these are just holding, I mean, they obviously, I can pick it up, but no squishing. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm gonna get these all lined up on our cookie sheet, or our baking sheet, whatever you call it. It is lined with parchment, that's important. I have a little tip that we're doing at the end, so I'm going to use 2 different sheets, and you'll see why when we get to the end. But I'm going to put half of these cranberry onto the baking sheet, and then half of our savory scone, which we'll get to in a moment, on that same baking sheet. Okay? And I'll show you why in just a little bit. So, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, and then the rest of these will go on to a different sheet, which I'll put right here. No problem. See that came apart? We just very gently stick that right back on there. Okay, and I'm going to set these both into the fridge. Okay, so now we're going to make our second scone recipe, which is a savory scone. And this is so delicious. What you do with this is you serve it, you can serve it for a luncheon, beside a salad, soups, stews. It takes the place of whatever bread you would have served, but this has lots of flavor. It's interesting in and of itself. And during entertaining, you make a nice big stack of these and you serve your beautiful stew, or whatever it is, beef bourguignon, whatever it is you're making that you would like to have a little something delicious to dip. Try this. Okay, so here we go. We've got our flour. The recipe will be below. In here, we've got our salt. This time, we've also got pepper. We've got our baking soda and our baking powder. Okay, we're going to give that a stir. Now we've got sugar, but obviously this is a savory one, so there's a lot less, only 2 tablespoons. Now, why do we put sugar in here at all? Well, because without it, it wouldn't brown well. So it's important to have that. Plus, it gives you a really nice balanced flavor. Okay, so we've got all our dry ingredients in. Mix it as well as you can. We'll get rid of that. Now in here, we have 1 egg and our heavy cream. No, we don't. Here's the egg. Okay, make sure we've got that egg being cooperative, which we do. We don't leave any in there. We paid for the whole thing. Okay. Now, this scone, by the way, we're doing cheddar cheese. We have sharp cheddar cheese and either chives or scallions. What I had on hand right now is scallions, so that's what I'm using. Originally, when I wrote the recipe, go away. Originally, when I wrote the recipe, it was with chives. But I have tons of chives, but what I had that I needed to go through was scallions. And why would I waste? I'm not going to. We just don't do that here. Okay, so in this bowl, we've got our dry ingredients, we cut in our butter, and we added our wet ingredients. So this is the same point we were when we added the cranberries and the orange zest in the last one. So what we're gonna do here is we're gonna add in our grated cheese. This is sharp cheddar. I used white because that's what I had. It doesn't matter. Whatever you like, use that. And then I've got my scallions. Okay. Now, it's nice to save a little bit of the cheese from the recipe and set it aside so that we can sprinkle like we did with the cranberry orange. We did the heavy cream and then the sanding sugar. In this case, we're going to do the heavy cream and cheese. And it'll look, it's decorative, it looks really pretty, and it tastes nice. So we're going to go through again and mix all of this up. Now, the cheese is certainly, gives you a little more resistance than the cranberries did. They're a little easier to work with, the cranberries, but that's okay. We're just going to take it and kind of fold it around. We're not pressing down yet. We're not doing that. We're just literally moving all of the cheese all throughout the dough, along with the scallions. We want to make sure that there's cheese and scallions in every bite. Okay, so that's all I'm doing is I'm lifting it up very loosely with my fingertips. One went over. Okay. And now we're going to do the exact same thing we did before, fly. And we're going to transfer our dough onto our work surface. We're going to do the exact same thing. We're going to press down. We're going to bring it together. Now this definitely is stickier because of all that cheese. Okay. And we want to go press it out until we're at an inch or so in thickness. Okay. We want to make sure we're not stuck to the board, which we are not. There's a good amount of moisture in here, so it's not likely. I mean, it's a good amount of moisture, but there's a lot of fat. You're not likely going to stick to your board. There's no wet flour bits or anything like that. Okay, so now we're going to come down just a little more until we're right at that thickness that we want, which is right about an inch. And then we're going to neaten up our circle. Any scallions that jump off, any bits of cheese that jump off, put them back on. Okay, now same thing with our brushing of heavy cream. And I'm generous with it. I want my cheese to stay where I put it. Okay, so we'll stick that aside. And then we've got the cheese that we saved from the recipe. This isn't additional cheese. I just pinched a little off the top. These will be super cheesy, and they'll have that beautiful onion flavor from the scallions. My original recipe does call for chives. You can use garlic chives. I mean, but there's so many places for you to go with this. You can add sun-dried tomatoes. This is the beginning. This is not where we end. Okay, so the same thing we did before. We're going to cut and then we cut it into our triangles and we get 8 perfect scones. I'm going to get these onto our 2 trays. Why 2 trays? This is a lot of scones. This would be 16 scones, 8 savory and 8 sweet. Do I need all that right now? No. And it's nice to have these things ready to go. This is the time of year when people pop up. You know, it's nice. It's people want to sit out on the front porch. You're not being eaten alive. You want to bring out something quick that you have on hand. This can be it. What we're going to do is I'm going to show you that we put them on sheet pans, and while they are raw, very important, don't bake them first. So what we're going to do is we're going to put half on that sheet pan that we'd already prepared with our sweet scones, the cranberry orange, and we're going to bake 1 tray, half the sweet, half the savory, and the others we're going to put into the freezer raw. That's very, very important, and here's why. When you do this and you put them in the freezer raw, you let them freeze completely. Then you take them out and you individually wrap them with parchment paper. Obviously, you label it so you don't have a surprise. You made soup and now you've got some sweet scone there. That's not what we want. So you make sure you properly label and you put them in zip bags, multiples in zip bags. You mark on the bag, not each individual scone. And that way, when you're ready to bake them, you have guests, you just want to have a little something special with your morning coffee, it's Christmas morning, whatever it may be, you can pull them out and baking them from frozen all you have to do is add a little bit extra time, and you'll pull them out of the oven as if you just made scones from scratch right that moment. And you hadn't. They were waiting on you, and they're spectacular. But because you're baking them from raw, you're not reheating and drying them out. That's the key. That's the secret, is why we don't want to reheat. A reheated scone is not something we're looking forward to. That's not special, okay? Baking them from frozen, fresh, you made them fresh, you froze them fresh, off they go. That's special, okay? I'm going to go get our sheet pans, and we'll go to the next step. Here we have our 4 sweet, 4 savory, 4 savory, 4 sweet. One sheet pan is going to go in the oven. The other sheet pan is going to go in the freezer. See you in a few minutes. Fresh out of the oven. Look at this. Now that is a scone. Look at the texture. Look how beautifully craggly they are. I'm fogging up because they're still so hot. Scallions, puddles of cheese. Look at that cheese. This is not your average scone. And you're going to have backups in the freezer, ready to go when someone pops up, or when you have a craving, which in my vote is better. See you next time.